In its best light, flexible dieting can allow you to make the diet feel almost effortless. I mean, to a
Yeah.
certain body fat, that's just not feasible. I mean, when you're talking about ultra low body fats, it's likely not going to feel sustainable, nor should it. But
Yeah.
if you can ease that portion, the in between when it is tough, and make it feel like it's not necessarily as rigid as it would otherwise, I think that's where it can really complement what you're doing. But
So another one is next one is a so flexible dieting. So I have a different opinion of flexible dieting. My definition of flexible dieting. What do you agree in terms of like flexible dieting, considering different types of diets, or I would say food choices? There's always this notion in bodybuilding or from bodybuilding coaches or even dieting for people dieting themselves that there is a certain type of food that you can only eat in order to lose weight. Like it's got to be chicken, broccoli, and rice. Something like some form of it's got to be a protein source of green and some boring type of grain or whatever. What's your take on you know what's your take on that? Like flexible dieting in a sense. What's your I would say definition? How would you define that in a sense?
I think over the years, my definition has changed. So viewers, if they followed me back in 2015, that definition would look very similar to what was, I would say, just publicized or popularized amongst that demographic. You know, the Pop Tarts and the emphasis on ability to be flexible and almost the abuse of ability to be
Yeah.
flexible. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was 19. Like, I mean, like I just I did my best. And the fact that I understood macromolecules, I was like, cool, like that's solid. But I think as I got older and as I got further into the sport and really started to listening to those markers that were important to me, I started to shift what that meant. And I mean, it started to become more around, hey, like, fuel can vary or food can vary in terms of how it serves our bodies. And really what I'm finding is that I'm not performing the best of my ability. I'm not seeing those results, not necessarily aesthetically, because I do think that like Seco, like I've gotten very lean off of being very reckless with food choices, but um, just because you can doesn't mean you should. And I mean, I think
Yeah.
that does come with maturity and the realization, like, I mean, you are doing this for yourself. So, I mean, very long-winded answer, but I think the flexibility, that aspect within flexible dieting, I mean, I think it can enhance an ability to adhere and sustain that diet. And I think in its best light, flexible dieting can allow you to make the diet feel almost effortless. I mean, to a
Yeah.
certain body fat, that's just not feasible. I mean, when you're talking about ultra low body fats, it's likely not going to feel sustainable, nor should it. But
Yeah.
if you can ease that portion, the in between when it is tough, and make it feel like it's not necessarily as rigid as it would otherwise, I think that's where it can really complement what you're doing. But I think the spectrum of how people define it can be very confusing for viewers.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree, and it's like an example for me is basically like, the process of what I've done for my journey in terms of like prep. I went from the very strict tilapia, the bodybuilding strict foods, right? And then when I was getting coached by Greg, it was more, I would say that was more flexible dieting in terms of like just finding basically like I would say calorie hacking, getting like making different types of meals or whatever that would still cross all the all the t's and dot all your i's in a sense of, but making it very enjoyable. But as the journey went on for me, in terms of like how my prep went, so from the start of prep, yeah, that worked and works, but then the closer down to those body fat levels you get, some of those foods that you eat that might be satiating and nice at that point, doesn't matter how tasty it is, the lower you get in calories, it's for me, I had to switch to more whole food. Like I couldn't have like French toast at 2 weeks out. I don't really care how satiating it is. French toast, healthy or not, is like triggering as hell. You're like, oh, nice, I can eat three pieces of French toast because I can calorie hack a bit, but it's still making me want to eat three more pieces of French toast.
Exactly.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it is like, when it comes to, prepping, I think there is a good tool and use of, flexible dieting, and not like, eating Pop-Tarts and whatnot, but finding like different foods or like meal choices or recipes that can help aid you in that way. But eventually when your body fat gets lower, there are certain foods that are going to be a lot more triggering than other foods or food choices and whatnot. And for those who are just like dieting down just to be, like if you're just going on your body, transforming your body to look good for something or whatever, I think that helps a lot more with them, and that's more sustainable with that group. And that's what I do a lot with my clients. When I'm giving things that are satiating, they're fun, but they're also not triggering, right? So I'm not going to say, yeah, you can fit McDonald's into your calories. Like, no, you can't, because you can't. It's not going to work. It's going to be triggering, and a Big Mac's going to be half of your freaking, your calories. So there has to be a level of responsibility of what you determine what flexible dieting is. But being flexible and smart about those choices, I think, are a powerful tool to keep you happy. Because again, the opposite of that is being way too strict. And then you can agree, and I've been through it, you fall into your palate is just dull. And the second that you have something that is somewhat, satisfying, you can agree on this. Like I remember we had back in the day, me and Greg had this little like joke of, as prep goes, things just start to taste really good no matter what it is. At the end of prep, I remember having like spinach and like Walden Farm syrup and and mixing that. And like, yeah, this is delicious, right? It's like, no, it's disgusting. After prep it was gross, but like that's what your taste buds are like at the end. So if you know, you're at that point where you're like super duper dull, and then you're like, oh, you kind of have a cheat meal or whatever, and that sends you finds you flying, it sends you flying off the radar. Like that's problematic in the end, and that's what leads to, I think, a lot of like guilt and shameful eating, and then it leads into EDs down the road. Thoughts, or you can
Yeah.
add.
Completely agree. The palatability does have to be approached with responsibility and care. I mean, so we do ice cream every night. We've done ice cream almost every night for, um, gosh, whenever the Ninja Creamy came out, we got it like I swear to God, the first month. And there was a point where we were doing all these, and this is when I was growing, so my calories were higher. I wasn't in a contest prep phase. So for listeners, so they have context. Now, when I was calculating up like the calories that I was adding to this like ice cream bowl, which was it was a homemade protein ice cream. I mean, like, it was very satiating and it's something I enjoy. And I still think arguably it's like a much better option than necessarily going out and having a cheat meal or an untracked pint. So it was purposeful, but then when I got to the point where I was prepping, I consciously made the decision like, hey, I'm going to remove this, and I'm going to remove something that to me, yes, I enjoy, but is hyper palatable, and it is only going to make me crave these kinds of foods. Whereas if I pull this for a couple months, like, gosh, I won't even need toppings. Like, I mean, literally just the ice cream itself, which is largely stevia based, it's going to still taste really good. And I think um, having some fluidity around, hey, like how flexible are you being with these food choices? And is that appropriate for your goals? Is that appropriate for how you feel? And I mean, like if you're getting results, okay, that's one thing. But like if results are lagging and you are being pretty loose with calorie counting, or in this case, I mean, food selection, that could be an area to address. But I do think like at the end of contest prep, just it's very irresponsible to start filling in food choices with things that are high calorie and a low nutrient content, which there are times where I have clients where I have to kind of intervene and be like, hey, like we can be more responsible with these choices. Here are some options. And even within those options, that client still has the ability to decide what they want to eat, which I think is really powerful. But it still has to be conscious of, okay, like this is your budget, work within it. Like be an adult about it, you know?
Yeah, yeah, definitely.